The importance of costume design in theater, film, and television is often overlooked, but it sets a tone, enhances character, and lends authenticity to any drama. Costume designer Jule Emerson will take us behind the scenes into the magic of costume design, next on Connect. Award-winning costume designer and former artist in residence at Middlebury College, Jule Emerson has experience and deep knowledge of how costumes work and what it takes to enhance the audience's experience, from the popular PBS Downton Abbey series to horror films and off-Broadway theater. Welcome, Jule. It's great having you here. Well, you've had wide experience in costuming and styling yourself, and we'll get to that, but because this is a PBS audience, I think we'll just go right to Downton Abbey. First of all, why do you think the show has been so popular?
I think it came out at a time where people were very sick of the all the reality TV shows. There was just like so many reality TV shows. And I think because it's on PBS and because it's period, even though it's really a melodrama, we have justifiable, like, we're fabulous because we're watching PBS. And, the fact that it's such good drama, at a time when there was such a glut of bad stuff. They're either murdering people or it's a talent show where we're watching what was the little baby girl who would sing and dance for Mama June or something. So
it's a relief from all of that.
It is a relief from all of that.
But it had an incredible influence and impact on Americans. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, until the Vermont Council for the Humanities asked me to prep a lecture on the series for their lecture series. And I was already a huge fan of Downton Abbey, so I was like, yeah, but I can't do anything halfway. So I really did a lot of research, and I could not believe their Downton Abbey paper dolls, their Downton Abbey coloring book, Downton Abbey, the coloring book, which makes it look like the costume designs. Actually, they don't do sketches, so this is just them. They have playing cards, they have teas, they have jewelry, the Ralph Lauren, connection. Sure, right. And that has inspired a whole lot of other fashion designers. It started in the Edwardian period, so all that Edwardian stuff had a huge run, and now we're going to see in modern fashion a stronger 20s influence, because that's what we're seeing in the program. But there's even, this to me is the pinnacle of success, right? There's even a Sesame Street Violet. So they have one of the little Muppets is dressed up like Violet, and that's just, to me, that's the prize. There is now a Downton Abbey digital game that you can play on your iPhone or your the other kind of phone, and yeah, and it's like a search throughout, where is this hidden in the house? And
oh my.
Yeah.
So we have a trailer of the new season, which has actually started in England, but won't be here until, January 3rd. But let's take a look at this trailer, and we'll turn down the sound in a minute so you can speak a little bit to the kind of costumes that we'll be seeing in this season coming up.
Great.
I can hardly believe it. I used to come here all the time as a boy.
Run to Mummy, Georgie.
So things are getting a little bit more modern here. Still 20s.
I think the sixth series is set in 1925, and the previous one was 24. So what we'll see are shorter hem lengths, and the men's stuff begins to seem a little bit more casual and comfortable. But men are still serving as a backdrop to the women, particularly in England. In America, the men are trending a little bit more. They're becoming a little bit more fabulous in terms of color and shape. But certainly the British men, who have always been a paragon of conservative tweeds, are still doing that. And I think what we're also going to see, and this has begun to happen in this past season, season 5, is Mary is getting tied more closely in terms of the design. She's always been designed as a strong woman with usually red or blue or black, and a fairly simple classic silhouette. But we noticed in last season her clothes had a little bit more of an edge. Some of her things were a little bit more, fabulous. And then this next season, we're going to see more of the tweeds too, because again, the classic tweeds, what she wore for the hunt and for the shooting, it very much speaks to everyone as English country estate, because now she is the person who's really going to inherit the estate as the mother of the child who is the next heir.
Right.
And so I think they're doing that too. We're on our third costume designer though. So I think it's a testament too to the management of the producers that most people don't know, haven't noticed that there's been that change.
So only 3 costume designers, but like 12 directors.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
the costume designers are actually have more of a continuity than the directors.
That's true. But the directors are per episode, and you have one director per season who is looking over all of them, and then you have, I think it's Alistair, who is doing serious continuity and period-specific stuff, and Liz, forgive me for not remembering her last name. Liz is just the goddess of the whole thing in terms of keeping it all running. But I think that, yeah, the continuity is awesome given all the different things that are going on. And the shows, I don't know if your audience knows this, but it's being too different. So the downstairs is shot in Ealing Studios, and a few of the rooms upstairs are shot in the studio. The rest of it is shot at Highclere. Can I tell your viewers one of my favorite things is knowing that
Highclere is that mansion.
Highclere is the mansion, right? Yeah. And so, which we all think of as Downton, but in reality, when we see a scene where they're in the kitchen and they're cooking, and she gives it to the footman and says, "Here, take this, come on, Thomas," he actually walks out of that kitchen, walks out of the mansion, gets a cab to London, to those studios to deliver it to the table. Right. No, it's a big difference in where some of these scenes are shot, and the editing and the continuity become all the more important.
Of course. Actually, we have a picture of the mansion with all these trailers out front, and so this is pretty interesting, and that this place is not available all the time. So isn't it kind of freezing? We also have a shot of the actresses in coats. Does that?
There's a wonderful quote about how it is when it's cold. When it's warm, it's cold. I mean, it is in a particular plane of English wind where it is better there most all the time. And
here they are.
You'll notice that not Violet, the mother of Matthew, who's there with the white hat. Yeah. I think that shot was the day of the wedding. So the day of Mary's wedding, and we remember all the village people and everyone's wearing the light colors. It was bitterly cold. So between takes, the hot water bottles and the down coats appeared.
Okay. We also have, it's interesting to see these actors as characters that we seem to know so well as real people. You also just turned me on to this wonderful photograph where we really have to look carefully to see who these people are and how much makeup and hair, and most of them wear wigs, and costume really create a flavor and a tone. What do costumes do for actresses like this to get them into character?
I think good actresses appreciate a costume that helps them become that character, and they can work as hard as they can in terms of their character interpretation and their carriage, but particularly I think in the first 2 series, which were set in I think it started in 1912. Right. So the first 2 seasons where the women were so heavily corseted, and there are quotes of them like, "Oh, this is really painful," but it forces a certain carriage. And, a woman cannot bend or sit or move in the same way unless they're corseted. And so the women with the corsets and the men who are still, I think, wearing the very high celluloid collars, really, they acknowledge the importance of these vestments, even though, again, they're cursing them at the same time. At this time, the only 2 women left in corsets are Mrs. Hughes and Violet. And it's because, again, it supports their
things
characters.
are loosening up.
Things are, yeah, the 20s is a whole loosening up. It's a freedom, it's a throwing away. And when I do my lecture, I show the difference in undergarments from then to now, and they're like practically naked, you know, in the 20s, it's like, wow. And so, yeah.
Here we go with one of the ads for
Yeah.
corsets of a certain time. That's
Yeah.
great. So, and how does costuming also help the audience kind of follow what's happening?
Well, I think that costumes have been acknowledged by the production team, and Gareth Neame, who I think is the main, the line producer, has said so, that the costumes play an enormous role in giving us time and place. And when you think about it, Highclere is still Highclere. I mean, that's an awesome big building, but it doesn't change much. And the art direction folks may add a different clock. But, you know, with the exception of the toaster, fabulous toaster episode, right? With the exception of the toaster, and I think we had a mixer, the telephone. I mean, those little bits of things say, oh, it's a new time. But overall, when you think of the rooms, the dining room and so forth, they still have the Edwardian grandeur. So it's really up to the clothes to tell us that times have changed.
And who the characters are.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and you could take away the actors, which we better not do, but because they are wonderful. But the clothes are what tell us the character. And you think of the costume that Violet typically wears, and you compare that to what Mary might wear, and there's a night and day difference in terms of the youth and the energy of these garments. And just contrasting, I love to contrast what were the three girls, and now that Rose has been added to the cast, there are three girls again, really. But Rose is the young, naive, kind of silly, you know, wild one. And because of her youth and exuberance, they're using much more muted pinks and blues on her. Mary, who is the more serious and the oldest, is in, again, the strong reds and blues and blacks, unless she's in tweed, where again she ties to the estate. Edith, you know, who I like to call poor Edith. Fortunately, the first season they just wanted her to look kind of funky. Then she went through her beautiful phase with Gregson, and I think now we're back to where there's a little bit more of a mix. The actress can wear a variety of colors, which is very handy when you're a costume designer. So I think this year she is going to shine again. I think they're going to let her look glamorous, and I hope let her fall in love.
It's interesting how they determine, depending on what they're doing and how the character is feeling, what they're wearing. So do costume designers, are all of these things built? Are they bought? Are they rented?
You have such good questions. In costume design generally, you look at your budget. I mean, generally you look at your budget and your priorities for the show and the time, and that will determine how much you build, how much you buy, how much you will rent. And the same thing is true, I think, in the case of Downton Abbey, although, of course, they certainly have a much higher budget. This image you're showing of the three girls is one of my favorites. And again, this is from the first season, but it's a wonderful example. Sybil is wearing something that was purchased at a vintage shop. Mary is wearing something that was built. Everything Mary wears is built because of her size. And Edith, again, poor Edith, is wearing something they got from a costume rental house. It was like lying in a corner. But they do that. What they also do a lot in terms of the evening wear, when they can't find authentic pieces, and they're finding more, able to use more as we're in the 20s. In the Edwardian time, it was very difficult. But the costume designers will go to all kinds of vintage places, and they may find a beautiful beaded piece that they will cut and use as an inset on a gown.
So sometimes we see these beautiful things right here, but the rest of the costume might not have cost a fortune like that.
And that will help place it.
Sure. Speaking of that, so you know, there are just reams of clothes in some of these trailers. What is a costume budget for an episode of Downton Abbey? Do you know?
I have it written down. I think it's something, maybe something like 380,000, something like that. But again, I wish I had.
So, but you can see, I mean, here is the princess. Also checking out. I mean, they're just each trailer must have hundreds of clothes and costumes. Here, the tags on there are for continuity.
Yes, those are the continuity sheets, and so you can tell there's a little photograph on each sheet, and that is the picture that has to be matched when the next sequence of shots are happening. That will all be part of that scene.
Right. That might be in the studio or might be in the mansion.
Right, absolutely. And that's where they also keep the puffy coats and the silk thermals, but there's also there's probably, I would assume, a full trailer full of things for the extras.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, just in comparison, so Middlebury College, a budget for a theatrical piece or a local theater, what would be a typical budget if you're working on? I mean, I know it's hard to say.
Right.
I'm sure the range is like 0 to, I don't know what.
I think for our productions at the college, I would often, again, and this is a decent budget for academic theater, I think I would often get a $12,000 budget for the 4 productions. And then, based on the needs of the 4 faculty productions, would, balance that.
Sure. Because some might, you might need.
And sometimes we're doing an epic period piece with a huge cast, and that alone may cost $5,000, because oftentimes our productions then will. One of our directors who has an affiliation with a professional theater company in New York will take that show, will remount that show with professional actors and student apprentice actors and take that to New York for a month's run.
Cool.
So the costumes tend to have a longer life than they once did.
You talked about an art director earlier.
Yes.
Does an art director and a costume designer have a lot of collaboration, or who do you collaborate with the most on a set around costume?
You're talking in terms of film?
Well, yeah. Or say on Downton Abbey, just because you brought in, they're in charge of what the whole set looks like. So do they have input on the costume?
And no, I think I think the art director, in terms of rank, has higher status than the costume designer does in film. But the goal of everyone is to make the project look stunning. And I think that there are a few times, I mean, so you as a costume designer, pardon me, for Downton Abbey, absolutely need to make sure you know what room that's being shot in, so that you don't put someone in a costume that's going to melt right into that. And there are a couple instances where there are some of the beautiful kind of ecru or ivory gowns that the women are wearing, and then they spend a lot of that scene sitting on a white sofa, and it's gone. They're like, where are they? So I think that's something that, even as exceptional as the Downton Abbey designers have been,
we'll start watching Downton Abbey a lot more carefully. And Vermont, PBS's Downton Abbey event that will happen, I guess, in March at the very end of the season next year, is the second largest in the country. You were at the last one. What are your impressions of that event?
It was unbelievable. When I found out it was the second largest in the country, and I used to live and work in LA and New York, and I was like, are you serious? But it was it was fabulous. I mean, we got to the theater, and there's the champagne and the hors d'oeuvres, and everybody is done up. So, it takes their costumes so seriously. And so I, as a costume designer, am just having a wonderful time looking at what they're wearing, and it was amazing. And the dinner and the appetizers and all the people, we had, I think, a blue screen so people could have.
Are totally into it.
Yeah, no, it was amazing, and some fabulous costumes.
So let's talk about how you work with literature as a costume designer. So what inspires you? What do you consider? We have some photos of your the importance of being earnest, for which you were lauded and got an award. But of course, this is just beautiful. The set and these costumes, they're kind of small. But what do you have to consider from literature?
Yeah.
How do you take the written word and decide what you're going to do?
It's a collaboration, first and foremost, but it also, to me, the most important thing is serving the play. So it's not about what would be fun for me to do, what period haven't I done yet. It's about what will bring this play to life. And when you're doing a play that has been done with some frequency, like Midsummer, think of any of the Shakespeares really, or and the importance of being earnest has been done a lot. You know there are going to be people there who've seen it before, and you want it to be fresh for them. So the whole idea when you're doing something that's been around is what can I say about this show that hasn't been said that will lend a new perspective. And I was so blessed because the director I worked with on this, Richard Romagnoli, is brilliant and had this concept. He wanted it all to be white. And honestly, the key thing as a designer when you read a text, like Importance of Being Earnest, is the humor. And one of the dominant ways we as designers show humor is through color and shape. You know, that's what's funny, that kind of color contrast that really tells us as an audience it's a comedy versus, oh, they're in browns and tans and whatever. And so my reaction was, holy crap, he's taken away this tool, this thing I have to use this tool. And he forced the set designer and I to find a different way in terms of showing the humor, and I ended up doing it with proportions, you know, and with scale, so that even though the clothes are white, I don't know if you can put them back on, even though the clothes are white, there's a distortion, there's an exaggeration to the silhouette. So I went through all my history of fashion knowledge, and I have some antique magazines, and the Delineator around 1912, 1914 had shapes like this, and I just, with a lot of asymmetry that I just thought was so cool, and yeah, it was a stunning production.
So in the late 80s, you found you in film, Star Trek and The Return of the Living Dead 2. We have some, as really, I think you were a stylist and I think you did makeup, and what did you do on those films?
On Star Trek, I think I worked on special effects makeup. On Return of the Living Dead, I was the women's costumer. I don't think there was a costume designer on the Return of the Living Dead. Anyway, yeah, but I had just recently moved from doing theater. Yeah. And I'd never done film or TV or commercials, and I went to LA because I wanted to learn how to do that stuff. And it was fascinating, and it was fun because, you know,
I think we have a picture or two of, I mean, this is crazy stuff.
I mean, these were all, okay, you do a monster movie, it's all night shoots. It's all night shoots, and it's all about distressing the clothes because they're zombies, and they've all been buried, you know, and their fingernails grow. What is it? You know, we learn things like that. But we spent more time distressing clothes. That's one thing people don't know, is that when you're a costume designer, it sounds so fabulous, but the truth is it's a significant amount of work, particularly in terms of I spent half my career destroying clothes, or having my staff make clothes and then destroy them because they have to fit just right and look just right, but we want them to be raggedy, you know,
So Barnum and Bailey Circus and Saturday Night Live also, you're a shopper and a stylist for those, a highlight from that New York period.
Well, that was when I first moved to New York from Minnesota, and I felt like Alice in Wonderland or whatever, you know, it was just like, oh my God, riding the elevator with Katharine Hepburn, and just, it was all feathers and sequins with the circus going on, and then shortly after that, I got moved up from being, I think, a milliner, feather wirer to a shopper, and so I would get sent out to shop for the different Broadway shows we were doing and SNL, and then I also got into doing wigs for SNL. So I actually did I think it may have been in I don't know what, the third or fourth season I did Mick Jagger's Santa wig. But it was fun because I'd be wherever working on something, and you'd hear Gilda tap dancing, or they'd be practicing a routine while they're waiting for a fitting. It was awesome. It was, you know, a beautiful, exciting introduction to working in theater in New York. And I was very lucky.
Yeah, actors love working with the costumers and I mean, I'm sure that some actors more than others really have a connection.
Oh yeah, yeah, and a good actor, you know, really, I've been working with Jen Maxwell a couple times for the off-Broadway stuff I do, and she is extraordinary. I mean, she's a toast to Broadway, and a good actor like Jan will be in a fitting with you, be all how awesome you are, and love you and love you and love you, but ultimately get you to do exactly what they want, and you will thank them for it, because they know what looks good on them. you know, but it becomes a collaboration not just with the director then, it's that collaboration with that actor and listening to them, because the truth is, I don't have to go out on stage wearing whatever it is, they do. And so I think you want them to be happy, you know, and excited about how this is going to serve that performance.
So what about us, everyday life? What does a costume say about us, or how caught up could we be? But what, you know, when you see people in everyday life, I'm sure you notice costume, what they're wearing.
I do, but I think that, you know, I again was teaching at Middlebury College, and I would teach my costume design class in the first day. The first day would be, how many of you are dressed fashionably in this room? I'd say hands. And there'd be maybe 2 girls, both of whom were like really trendy. And then I would tell them all that those were the 2 who weren't fashionable. Because the truth is, we each go within our own little tribe. Within the Middlebury College tribe, if they're dressing on trend in terms of Marie Claire or whatever fashion magazine they follow, that's not Middlebury College. Middlebury College is the baseball caps and the, you know, no, with the backpack, and they have a big, you know, Louis Vuitton bag. That is not Middlebury College fashion. So it's interesting how, you know, we all look at it. But I will say for myself, I can't sit in a meeting and not see all the different colors. Yeah.
Jule Emerson, thank you so much. We'll not look at TV, film, or theater quite the same way again. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Vermont PBS would like to connect with you and keep the conversation going. You can always reach out with feedback and ideas at connect@vermontpbs.org. You can also check out other episodes and extra material at vpt.org. For all of us at Vermont PBS, I'm Fran Stodard. See you next time.